And
Okay,
ready to rock.
we're going.
All right. And I am going. Here we go. How you doing, everybody? This is Dennis Michelson. Welcome to the science of fantasy football. Why the science of fantasy football? You had a meteorologist, you dash in a little biologist, and all of a sudden you got two guys with a scientific background that are applying that in fantasy football. And what does that mean to use the scientific method in fantasy football? It simply means we're going to let the statistics guide us to an answer instead of cherry picking statistics. Oh, you know the kind. Oh, this player is the WR1 on Monday Night Football when there's a full moon and he's playing on the road in the rain. The more you see different characteristic breakdowns of the stats, the more that person is cherry picking the stats to get the statistics to fit their narrative. That is no bueno when it comes to fantasy football. And joining me, as he does on every episode, because he is the fantasy professor, he's a real professor and one of the smartest guys you're going to see with data solutions. It is John Bush. And John, 1 week to go before the vaunted fantasy football playoffs, and you either know where you are right now or you're already hoping for next season.
Yeah, where are we? Uh, you know, there are some teams, Dennis, that I am out of the running. I will set lineups and do what I need to do. This is the old we're not quitting here. So when I do that, we're doing points at FFPC,
Yes.
and I look to see which teams I'm 100 points away or more. And I figured those were the teams that I probably couldn't catch up to get into the playoffs, sixth place. That's what gets you in there. I actually didn't have but four out of about 40. So,
That's fabulous.
well, but there's that next group, say 80, 20 to 80 that maybe versus probably not, but at least I can apply my thinking to those there. And of course, I've got a nice selection that are in, the top six right now. So, we'll just see. I actually looked at our best ball. I think we're 25, maybe 30 points ahead. So
Woo.
we just need to kind of have another just a steady week, and we should make it first or second. We've been first the whole time, so we need to just nut we just don't need it to the ball to drop. Unfortunately, the sun god will be out, so I'm hoping,
Oh,
Dennis, that people like Devontae Adams and some of our other mainstays will step up and roll us into there. I'd hate to be first all the way and then lose it this last week. That would just be typical for fantasy, but heartbreaking as well. But anyway, I did that last night. I set my waivers up. It's pretty thin on waivers this week.
oh yeah.
But there was a few out there that I went for because I had players that I thought are not useful at this point. So uh, did that. We'll see what happens, but that's kind of where I'm at. I started thinking, uh, and so the concept I thought about maybe next year if I have time, the spiky index, Dennis.
Ah, yes.
I'm thinking that we need to define a player worth having in the playoffs. We obviously got the stud likes and the almost studs, and then you got this spiky players, and I started thinking, okay, but there's a population, right? I mean, if we did the box and whisker there. So I started thinking, what kind of player would I want if it's a spiky player? And my definition for playoff spiky player is shown a capacity to spike at least 1 and 3. So if I've got
Interesting.
3 weeks playoffs, right? I would love to have a spiky player that at least has shown in the past they can wake up 30% of the time on average, right? I mean, if you got a spike player that wakes up, 10% of the time, versus, if I've got a choice, right, I would rather have a spikier player, you
Yeah.
know, maybe with less points than a player that most may not even hit for me in the 3 weeks. So, and I don't know what that means, Dennis, on the I started thinking, and it may be too late this year. I probably should have been thinking about this, 3 or 4 weeks ago. Kind of start, okay, I've got these, is this person capable of giving me at least 1 week in the playoffs? Just kind of a foundational. Can I expect us? And I hadn't decided what the point level is. I'm going to say above median right now, so about 13 points, 15 points, somewhere in there, that a player that can at least shown that they can spike up from 6, 7, or 8 to 15 once every 3 games is worthy of some serious looking. So I'm thinking of definitions, but I think we should have had that about what 3, 4, 5 weeks ago. Started kind of separating out the weak on the end of our bench. Who's gonna. I know we got the handcuff people, but I'm thinking a lot of these wide receiver spiky types, right? Like Chris Godwin, I think is probably could spike this week actually coming back, and so I'm thinking that could be somebody worthy, but that's the kind of thinking, and I don't know a lot about it, Dennis. I just wanted to throw that idea out before I forgot. And maybe it's MVP leads us there, comms, maybe we develop something else, but I'm looking for players that can at least give me one shot in the 3 weeks.
And one of the tools that I'm using in my Leader of the Pack articles this year is spike weeks over the last 10.
Mhm.
And it's interesting to look at it that way, but we might need to look at total spike weeks or percentage of spike
It's
weeks.
something.
And I'm defining spike week as 15 or more points
Yeah.
for a running back, wide receiver, or tight end.
Mhm.
And then I'm using 20 points, and that's in six points for a touchdown, any kind of a touchdown quarterback leagues. So that's kind of what I'm using, but I'm not so sure that that's the right number.
Mhm.
It,
Yeah,
it
I don't
seems
know.
it seems logical, but and I'm not sure that the spike games over the last 10 is the best way to look at that versus a percentage. Maybe we're looking at spike week percentages. I don't know. My upside potential also catches that. And it catches that over a longer period because the guys who have the higher upside potential are the guys that have shown that upside consistency of having the big weeks. And so I've got two of my methods of grading players that factor some of that in. But you're right. There is more study that is needed. The interesting thing, you're talking about the playoffs, in FPPC.
Yep.
I have one league, Professor, where it is crazy, absolutely crazy crackers. I'm 10 points out of sixth place right now.
Wow.
I'm 37 points out of first place. That's how close this league is, where the guy who's first in points right now, theoretically, if he has a horrible week, he could have been
He could be out of
first
the playoffs, yeah.
for 13 weeks, and he's less. Versus other leagues, where I have one league where I'm like only maybe only about 30 points inside of second place right now over third.
Right.
200 plus points over seventh. So it's just this wide
Maybe
gap.
that's part of our diary. Did we
Yes.
do better in
It,
one environment versus the other? Not saying you could predict that, but just curious, just for our knowledge, where do we excel in a tight environment or not?
one thing I have noticed is my consistency is why I'm doing well. If I look at the teams, and this is again, this is part of that grading every week thing, that yeah, it's a bit of work to do it, but I've been pretty intrigued, and I only missed 1 week out of 13 so far. So I've done pretty well in remembering to gather the data,
Yeah.
because I'm not only looking at, and I can get week 12 data is the one I missed. Ironically, it was my least busy week from other things going on, but it escaped my mind. I thought I had already done it last week. But the difference, I can check everything else out. I can know where the first and sixth and where I finished. They're the leagues where I've been really ultra consistent, and I'm a consistent top six guy, are the leagues where I'm doing really, really well, because I've noticed that there's a lot of people that they're like a they're like a typical better in best ball guy, player wise, because they'll be first 1 week, they'll be ninth the next week, they'll be third, then they'll be 10th. I'm like fourth, fifth, third, second. Occasionally I get a win. Then I might be seventh or eighth. I'm rarely at the bottom of the pack. And that way you don't lose a lot of points. Even when you have an off week, you're still in the running. And I'm happy that out of 13 teams right now, I'm sorry, 18 teams, I got 13 in the playoffs.
Nice.
I've got 4 really close that are within 25 points. And I have 11 teams where I'm more than 50 points ahead of that seventh place. I have 7 teams where I'm more than 100 points. So if I look at it the other way, I'm 7 to the plus 100 side, only 2 to the minus 100 side. So that I grade as a pretty good season.
Well, I'm not sure I'm that good. Uh, I'm not sure if maybe 40 is too much. I mean, I just ran out of time. I would have kept drafting, and I'm curious to see how it all works this year and see if I'm, make any money or not. But I've enjoyed this time, but like I said, we're going to be switching over to the next round here. I mean, there's a lot of people start getting a little nutty, and you know, I think you've got to emphasize what's got you here, is you don't go
Yeah.
crazy. But that seems common sense. You hear that everywhere, so I'm not sure that's valuable because if you're not listening to what everybody's preaching, then that, you know. But to me, I was thinking about the spikiness was something I haven't considered. You know, I've got handcuffs sitting there, just ready if something were to happen. It's getting lean. I wish they'd make a call on Kamara if, because I have a lot of him,
Yes. Yes.
because I'll roll him away and go fish for some other, shots. I just need to know that. You know, I finally let go of Flacco, or I will be letting go tonight. I think I had him in a couple of places where I had some Lamar injury and he kept me in the game, but he kind of floundered at the end. I think he got hurt and wore himself out. And you know, Cousins I actually picked up and I'm going to keep him. Uh, Not excited about any of these, Dennis, but you got to have a quarterback to do something with.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so I'm starting to try to make some strategic pickups if I can. As you know, a lot of players I would have liked to pick up, we can't. And if they were dropped, somebody else dropped them
Yes.
foolishly in some cases. Some people had dropped Neil, and I was angry about that. So, that kind of thing. I think you and I both think he's going to have a better shot this week. Just the volume was there last week. Just, he didn't score, but I'm hoping that some of my shares will, come in. Hampton, I'm worried about for my Vidal shares.
Yes.
I'm greedy. I didn't need any competition. So the best I can hope for is that he'll be on some type of pitch count, and in extreme situations, I will play Vidal, but probably not as much as I did last week. I played him everywhere I could possibly play him last week and was so proud when I got some nice, that helped me. Sure did last week.
I have two teams where I know they're more than 50 to the good right now.
Yeah,
So they'll make the playoffs in FPPC.
yeah,
They wouldn't be there if it wasn't for Vidal because my other option would have been a 3-4 point week.
right.
And if you look at Vidal, every time I've fired him up, and I have played him in every week since Hampton went down, he's been an automatic start for me.
Yeah,
And a few of those weeks, if you compare him, in baseball, we've got WAR, wins over replacement.
right.
And I look at the same thing in fantasy football. It's like, who would have been your replacement? It would have been 4 points.
Yeah,
Okay. And so if you score 25, that's a plus 21 day for that player
right.
versus what you were used to getting without him. And you're right. It's like Hampton, shouldn't you just shut the season down to make sure you're
Yes.
okay?
Here,
You're a healthy
let's
young.
agree with that. So we'll get the coaches to agree with us.
Yeah, get it. Listen, I don't even want to work on the coaches because they want to win games, so they're not worried. But I'm worried about you, Omari and Hampton. You only have so many
Yeah,
years in this league, young man. I think I know you're listening because you listen every week, and I because we were right about Kamani Vidal being the guy and not Haskins. But I'm worried about your career, young man. If you go out and get hurt, then you're not getting a second contract, and we know how lucrative that is. So I think you just shut it down rest of the year, maybe come back for the playoffs,
yeah,
show that you're a team guy, but you know sit out sit
yeah,
out the next 4 weeks, come back week 18, and then for the playoffs. That's what my recommendation is to you.
Yeah.
And I'm not just saying that because in 13 FPPC leagues, I have 8 shares of Vidal. But no, all kidding aside, you know, Kamani Vidal,
8 shares is, come on, Dennis.
yeah,
I have 35 shares
I know
of,
you did much
I
better
have
because
85%.
and,
He's
and
everywhere.
you listened to me when I
I
said get him
did.
for $1. I said get him for $1.
Yeah.
I didn't listen to my own self.
Oh,
I did
Dennis.
not pick up as much of Vidal as I should
Oh,
have.
man. I got him
Oh,
everywhere.
I know you did. You did really well on that.
And I
If I
got, yeah.
I
Yeah.
need to follow my own advice more often.
Come on.
That's my problem.
And,
I get antsy when it comes to,
let's just say if James Cook goes down in the
oh,
playoffs, I'm going to be
yeah.
there to collect.
Oh, the Ray Davis dance will
If
do. Yeah.
Gibbs goes down, I got lots of money. So I mean,
Yep.
if you, I mean, that's not me wishing anything. I'm just saying. Or if Jacobs in Green Bay
Oh,
can't
yeah.
make it,
We
I'm,
got a
I'm
we
yeah,
got a good Emmanuel
I'm
Wilson
going to
week.
be doing
Yeah.
well. Any of those situations happen, Dennis, I am prepared and will benefit and will probably win. If multiple things happen, I could have the best season ever. That's, but if one of those, I'm going to steal some wins that I probably wouldn't have gained if any of that, especially this week. If Gibbs, Cook, or let's see, Jacobs, Green Bay. If any of those go down, and if Hampton stays away, Dennis, goodness, I would do well. I will. So isn't that funny? It comes down to maybe one injury or so to make a profit. I mean, this is not a game for people that are not focused because, you had 1 week to collect Vidal. You had multiple weeks for Davis, probably Wilson, Manuel, probably,
Ollie Gordon is another
yeah,
one
that
that,
kind of, there's
yeah.
you another one. And,
Yep.
but it comes down to you probably had a window and, you had to be there. And if you weren't focused, Dennis, you didn't take advantage of that. So people say it's luck. My argument is it's focus. And, if those that claim I'm unlucky, I would like to check their process to see how they behave each week because I bet you, they probably start thinking about it about Sunday morning at about 10:30. And that is way, you can't, play in one or two leagues for fun, but if you're going to play in lots of leagues and put money down, it's 24/7.
If you're playing for money, okay, and this is something that is in my DNA. Okay. My dad, if you played him in any sport or anything for money, look out. Like I would do it for fun. We'd go out golfing on this little par 3 course in town. And I'd say, okay, so here's what we're doing. So we're going a buckle hole straight up, front 9. How many ever I beat you in the front 9, I was a pretty damn good golfer back in the day. How many ever I beat you in the front 9, that's how many strokes you get for the back 9. And you can pick which holes you get that extra stroke. So we do that. And my dad didn't sandbag because he didn't want to lose $1 to me. So he played his best golf, and I'd beat him maybe 3 or 4 on the front 9. Of course, he'd beat me 3 or 4 on the back 9 with the handicap. I had to now play better than I was playing, and then better than what he's playing in order to match him on the back nine, but it was fun. It was, it's not a lot of money on the line. We had a good time and all that stuff. But my brother was not that smart. He would bet my dad in ping pong all the time. And my brother was a really good ping pong player. And he'd say, I'll give you 10, Dad. I'll spot you 10. And if they're playing for $1, it was pretty even. If they're playing for $5, my dad usually beat him. If they were playing for $10, my dad never lost. Like it was, and so that's in my DNA. So if I'm playing anything for money, I'm gonna look for every edge that I can get. And one of the things that I think is so undervalued, and I say undervalued because I'm going by how much noise is made about this in the preseason, it's roster management. It's draft strategy, roster build theory, and then roster management. And by that I mean, when I get done with a draft, if I've executed it the way I want to, I'm always going to have a couple more running backs than wide receivers because I'm not drafting ordinary wide receivers. I know I can get ordinary wide receivers off of waivers. So if I've executed what I call my perfect draft, I've got 2 solid choices at quarterback. I got a really good tight end, and then I've got a sleeper tight end, a guy that is being undervalued. This year it was guys like Brenton Strange. It was guys like Jake Ferguson that you think are going to, and even Hunter Henry was on that list of guys that are going really late in the draft. And those are the guys that I back up a good tight end with. And people are like, well, you don't need a great tight end backup. Maybe I do. What if a guy gets hurt? What if he's off on a bye week? I don't want to lose points. This is FFPC. I can't afford to lose a week because you lose a week in FFPC where you can lose 150 points in a week.
It's not good.
And it takes you 10 weeks to get that back. So I think the roster management, the roster build, and then the roster management aspects of fantasy football are not talked about nearly enough. I know you and we always churn our roster.
Mm-hmm.
This is one thing I love about FFPC. It drives me crazy at times, but then I'm remembering why I love this rule where if you drop a guy after week 11, he's dead. He's gone.
Yep.
Nobody can grab him. And I love that because one of your biggest fears in fantasy football.
Yeah, you drop somebody that they grab.
Yeah.
And he wakes up.
Could you imagine if you had drafted Kamani Vidal as a backup to Hampton?
Yeah.
Then you had a couple of injuries at wide receiver or other positions, and all of a sudden you got to go fishing.
Yeah.
And you got to get rid of somebody, and you dropped Vidal the week before he was a $200 bid.
Right.
To get him. That would be embarrassing. But late in the season, if I want to go ahead and cut Bashal Tutin because I'm not, I need a roster spot for another position, or I want to cut maybe even a couple weeks ago, I was like, do I need Kayshon Boutte anymore? I'm past all the bye weeks for my guys. He's a really good upside guy, but he's also a low floor guy. So I don't like those guys on my team if I can help it. If I can get 4 or 5 guys. I mean, everybody's talking about how Emeka Egbuka hasn't had a great week in like 4 or 5 weeks now. Yeah, that's right. But he also hasn't had anything under 7 points.
Nope.
So he's been bad, but he's not been awful. And if you're going to have those last flex positions, you got a couple of choices to make. And I think Egbuka is a great one because he's going to get you 6, 7, 8 points on a bad week.
Right.
And then if he can get in the end zone twice, which he was capable of doing early in the season, all of a sudden you got a 19, 20-point game. So you got the safety of the decent floor. And in my thinking, 6, 7 points is a solid floor. I'm okay with that. I'm not jumping up and down excited about it, but I'm okay with that. If that's my worst week that I have, somebody's going to pick up the squad somewhere else. And I'm going to have a 140, 150 point week on FFPC, and that's good enough to move forward in the standings. Obviously, you love having those 170, 180, 200 point weeks. They're rare. But if you can be 140, 150 every week or almost every week, you're going to go playoff hunting in FFPC. We got to start thinking too. And I, this dawned on me this year. I wrote articles for the first half of the season, at the quarter pole after half, based on this. We got to start thinking of the season as 4 quarters of a football game. Because not every player is going to be great in a starter for 16 weeks. But almost everybody that you're going to have on your roster is going to have 4 or 5 good weeks. And if you can get those in a row because of other guys that are out, then you're feasting. That's the Kamani Vidal deal. That's, Egbuka at the early part of the season was 15, 20 point guy because nobody else was healthy. And he was the best choice in town. Now you got a mess on Tampa Bay. I don't know what the hell to do with him yet because you got Evans that might be back this week. Godwin, who's looking good. He's looking like his old self again. He's just not getting enough snaps yet, but he will as the season wears on. Then you got Egbuka. You got Tez Johnson, who's a terrific player. And they activated Jalen McMillan this week as well. And we saw what McMillan did down the stretch last year. So they've got 5 guys that are better than anybody the Buffalo Bills have. Isn't that scary?
It's very scary.
So we don't know what to do with Tampa, but, I think the good guys are going to get us 6 to 8 minimum. If they fall in the end zone, then it's a 15-point game. So we'll have to look at each team to see, but I'd be reluctant to bench the guys. They're not going to be my starting wide receivers, just like Justin Jefferson's the last flex play now. But we got to start thinking in the 4-quarter mentality of fantasy football. I saw somebody, big name, Field Yates. I'll even mention it because I'm not insulting him. He was talking up a big deal of who's the fantasy football MVP this year. Is it CMC? Is it JT? Is it Puka? Who is the fantasy football MVP? And my answer is, it might be Jake Ferguson. Look how cheap you got him. It might be Emeka Egbuka. No, he hasn't been great for 13 weeks, but he was really good for 6 weeks. He helped you win your first 6 matchups if you go head to head. He was a positive point guy in FFPC. He was one of the top 10 wide receivers every week for the first 6 weeks. Those are the kinds of guys you want on your roster. And I don't care if that guy is the same guy as my WR1 every week, or whether it's 4 different guys that I have to use to hit that top 10 level on any given week. But we need to start thinking more of guys as transient talents. I think we're all pretty good at picking out the studs, But boy, if you can nail your roster down with the good second tier guys that get you 4 to 6 good weeks, and you can play the matchups to get them in your lineup for the right weeks,
Right.
that's fantasy gold.
I agree. I agree. I like to think about that. In FFPC, I've got to think about how important is streaming for me as well. Kind of tangential. Have there been defenses and where it's the MVP for my teams might be my skill at defensive pickups.
Yes.
Instead of a player, maybe it's a skill, or I'm good at quarterback drafting, having one, that I can flip back and forth. Maybe that's the most important thing that I did. So it could be a skill. I think we focus on a player, but I think we are to think about skills as the most important thing to master, not just picking the player, but picking your skill. I mean, it could be the same thing, they could lead to the same, but I don't think we talk enough about the pros and cons of streaming. And that's something, I don't know when I'll get to that, but that's something I want to do some more research on, Dennis, to, you know, how good have I been this year in streaming? I've had some pretty good weeks, but then I'm probably tricking myself, because I remember the good weeks and I would like to look at it after the season, all the adrenaline settled and I can apply that looking at my lineups each week and whatnot. I don't know how long they keep that data up on FFPC. But hopefully I can swoop in there and do some studies on that. But I'm just wondering, is that something I need to improve on? Because I
Yeah.
haven't tested. I know we talk about drafts, right? We see, okay, we did this, we did that, the better than zero. But I'm wondering is how that merges with streaming, kind of a holistic approach to things, kind of the draft and then the weekly play. How do we make all that together and apply a consistent, 1-2 punch, the draft and then the weekly play? And if you ask me, I'm going to guess 60% is draft, 40% is weekly play, including streaming. That's just, Dennis, that is a guess. There's no data to that. That would be my hypothesis. And I would like to figure that out and test on that some, maybe, off season. And it may be different for different people. And if somebody's writes us say, 80% of my success is the draft. If I'm 60 and they're 80, well, why don't they tell me what they're doing?
Yes.
I'm not going to be ashamed or if somebody's weekly play, words they draft crappy, but they play great. In horse racing, you'll see people that are good handicappers, but they're bad at their money.
Oh,
I've
yeah.
seen other people good at money, but not the greatest at handicapping.
Yes. Yeah.
And so,
Yep.
if you ask me where's the balance, I'm not sure I would know. And then, I'm not sure I've got myself figured out on, my balance on that. And I think in fantasy, I'm still thinking about drafting versus weekly play. And that's probably something we could think about and test and look at, see if we can make ourselves a bit better. What is our better than zero, but for weekly play? In other words, you know, what we think works, in our the better than zero, I'm about this year was really good to me in a lot of times, but weekly play, what method do we need to develop and get better at, Dennis? And I'm thinking streaming could be one. Could be.
So on the streaming side first, because I got a couple of follow-ups for you here on what you said, because boy, you unloaded a
I
lot of good
did,
stuff
didn't I?
there. Yeah, so on streaming, I had a team this year, an FFPC, where because of the quirk of injuries, let's call it that,
Yeah,
the quirk of injuries, I didn't see anything I really liked on the waiver wire.
yeah,
And it was a situation where I didn't like the defense that I was playing this week,
no,
but I really liked their matchup the next 2 weeks,
yeah,
and it was New England.
right.
Okay, it was the New England defense who's been really solid this year.
Hmm.
Have they been number one? No, but they've been really consistent, and I like that. So I did something I've done very rarely over the course of playing fantasy football. I carried two defenses for a short time.
Yeah,
And I always kept New England. And occasionally I picked up a second defense. And then if I had New England back in there as the starting defense, and I didn't like the matchups for the other defense coming up, I used that roster spot to add the player I needed during bye weeks.
hmm,
So it was a fluid situation, but the constant was I've kept New England the entire year. And they've been kind of my base defense. Occasionally I've replaced them, but probably played them, I'd say 9 or 10 of the 13 weeks, which is unusual for me.
right.
And Atlanta has been a transient defense for me too, where I picked them up on good weeks. I've let them go, then I picked them back up. So I think there are some in FPPC where we have 10 bench spots. I can see the concept of a base defense if I can get them cheap enough. Like I'm not drafting a defense before round 16. I'm just not doing it. We have 20 rounds in FFPC. But if I can get a defense that I like the matchups of, I like the consistency of, and I can get them in the 18th round, maybe that's a good deal of using them as a base defense all year. Because I know if I go through my teams, and I'm not talking about handcuff running backs because those are a different creature. That's the insurance policy. It's like buying insurance for your car. You hope you never need it.
Right.
You hope you never have to cash the claim. But you pay that, you pay that bill every month because you're like, I can't go without insurance. You kidding me? There's crazy people out there. It's not when I'm a bad driver, it's that everybody else is, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah,
if I look at some of the wide receivers and some of the tight ends, they may never have gotten in a starting lineup this year. So what was the purpose of holding on to them if they never got in the starting lineup or they only got in the lineup once? Well, what was the benefit to using a roster spot for that versus for defense? It's the same mentality that I first applied to quarterbacks and tight ends because as soon as I saw 10 roster spots, 10 bench spots, I'm like, ooh, slim pickings are available on the waiver wire quarterback. I can add two of these.
hmm,
I can have two, and I'm happy to have two because you just never know. And some of the teams where I didn't do well this year, I lost both quarterbacks. and you don't want to lose both quarterbacks. So that's, I do think we can do some research, more research on consistency. Maybe it's a different way of looking at consistency. Maybe it's a how many weeks over a certain point total did they give you? Because I think we're really good at figuring out the bad weeks for that defense. We just may not know, there were a couple of times where we thought we had a good defensive matchup when got our butts kicked. I had one time I played Carolina where I thought they were in a good deal and
I think I
lost 2
remember
points.
that way. Mm-hmm.
Lost 2 or 3 points that week instead of gaining.
Yep.
But an interesting league that we're in this year has really taught me a lot about defense, and that's this TSA league, the redraft league, because they've got like steroid points for defenses. The way they put it for scoring, if you give up a lot of points and a lot of yards, you can have a -15 day. You don't want to lose points.
That's bad.
But we've had a couple of weeks, Professor, including last week, where we were plus 35.
Nice.
So there's a big, when you have a spread that the best defense in TSA scoring is a 52-point week and the worst is a -15, that's a significant advantage that you can gain. And we're playing a lot of Seattle. We were riding Seattle week after week, and then we got rid of them and we never got them back.
Right.
And we've been kind of playing the matchup game ever since, and we've been doing okay. We haven't gotten our butts kicked, but the more penalizing the scoring rules are for a bad week, the more I think you do need to think less about streaming. The other thing I wanted to follow up on is you got to know your strengths in fantasy football and your weaknesses. And it doesn't mean your weaknesses can't get better. Many, many years ago. So this is pre-internet fantasy football in the early 90s. I got invited to this league, and it was a little pricier than I wanted to spend back then. It was a $500 league for the season. And I was like, phew, I've played for 150. I've played $200 leagues. 500 that's like me betting $100 on a horse at the horse racetrack. It doesn't happen. I know how erratic things can happen. And I'm having more fun with a $5 bet than I ever would with 100. Even if I win, I'm not enjoying the race type of thing. But a friend of mine came to me and he says, "Hey, look, I just got invited to this league." I said, "So did I." He says, "I don't really want to spend $500. I think my wife would kick my butt." I said, "Mine too." And we decided to team up and split the team. So he said to me, "Dennis, I know from playing in my home league, you're really good at roster building, but you can sometimes suck at picking the right players for the weekly lineup." I said, "Yep, Jay, you are absolutely right. I get carried away with matchups. I sometimes overthink it." And I said, "Jay, by the way, you are really good. I noticed because I was doing the stats. This is pre-internet days. You had to, somebody in the league had to do the stats and had to do the scoring. And Jay rarely had a player on his bench that outscored his worst starter. He was really good at figuring out those matchups. So we did something unique. I drafted the team with almost no input from him. He made the starting lineup decisions every week with very little input from me. We won the league 3 times in a row before we were kicked out. We weren't invited for year 4. After winning 3 years in a row, and we won good money. But the moral of the story is know your strengths. Teaming up with you I understand where your strengths are, and
Uh-oh.
it's finding the matchups. Like when you are really high on a matchup, I can bank on that one. Versus the times when you're, I think this is the guy, type of deal. You understand when you understand your risk reward value on a matchup, you're damn good at it. And that's why I utilize you when I've got
Okay.
those tough decisions. And I know if you're kind of wishy-washy and tap dancing on the answer,
Yeah.
I factor that into the decision.
Yeah.
If you're quick to respond and this is the guy,
Yeah.
then I know this is the guy.
So this
Like,
is picking a player, is that?
yeah, or streaming defenses or kickers.
Mhm.
You're really good at finding those matchups, and when you are really positive about that pick, it shows
Right.
in your confidence level. If I'll ask
Oh
you,
my God.
if I
Okay.
ask you three players, and I say I need to start two of the three, and you aren't sure,
Yeah.
it's very apparent that you're not sure.
The Before I forget, Dennis, I didn't realize that,
Oh
Dennis.
yeah, yeah.
Would
And again,
you should?
this is a weather forecasting skill because
Yeah. Yeah.
when I would ask other forecasters,
Right.
I could tell their confidence
Yeah.
factor.
So before I forget, I made one bet today just while you were talking.
Woo! Hey,
Look at
that's
that,
nice, man. That's
homeboy.
nice. That's
Boy,
nice.
that healed me. Yeah, I was thinking this thing here. We probably need to uh, focus. I mean, I wish we had time. I need interns to do the fantasy so I could go back, circle back to my horse racing on days like this. I need to do that, Dennis.
Well, I like your strategy on that. Was that a superfecta again?
Yeah, that's only.
Yeah.
I'm just experimenting for the last 2, 3 years on superfecta strategies. So I started a new strategy with that bet. I've been thinking about it, and you know, I hate that because now you're okay. It's the winners. It can. I'm probably not making another bet today, Dennis, because psychologically I'm not
Yes.
right now.
Oh
I'm
yeah.
giddy. When you can take $2 and make it 300,
Yeah.
that makes you giddy there a little bit. So you're not thinking right. But
Oh yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
freaking amazed that that worked. So
Yeah,
anyway,
whenever you get on a roll, and it is actually the same in fantasy football. If you
same thing.
absolutely like stomp every decision,
Yeah,
okay, like last week in TSA,
yeah.
we had, I would say, more questionable decisions in that starting lineup
We're
than
fourth in the league. We're gonna make the
oh
playoffs.
we're in the playoffs.
Yeah,
We'll make the playoffs no problem, and we'll make some noise
it's
because we
good.
had
Yeah.
we're fourth with Lamar having three crappy weeks in a row. We're doing well
What are
when
we gonna do with Lamar?
you
Anyway,
you gotta
go ahead
ride
and
them.
finish, and then let's circle back to that because I got that question my draft night
Oh
out.
yeah, yeah, and I did bench Lamar for Stafford last week in draft night out, and I'm glad I did it. But
Nice.
no, the
So
when we
last
have
week we had a
last
lot of
week in
questionable
TS
decisions.
yeah TSA we're like, who do we start? We've got all these moving parts and options, and you had the Thursday games, and we had questionable receivers. Devonta Smith and Olave were both questionable. It wasn't a slam dunk that they were going to play or even play well if they played at all. We had so many moving parts. We got Diggs. We got good. We have good moving parts. Okay. We have a decision to make because we drafted and managed well. But we both liked Mananje
Yes.
from the Bears last week. And, we
Dennis,
love,
I perceived him to be a a high floor 8 to 10 that could accidentally get in the end zone. Swift had been a little gimpy.
yep, yep,
Mananje had been doing so. I was thinking his floor was 16 to 20,
yes.
and his ceiling and his floor 8 to 10. And I thought in a flex situation he was worth a go.
Yeah. And we had Chase Brown and Javonte Williams in our starting lineup
Yeah,
at running back.
I
And
I had no problem with that.
they
Yeah,
were, we're rolling with these guys. We had
yep,
Puka and
yep,
Devonta Smith in the
yep,
wide receiver spot, and we
yep,
were rolling and Olave. We're like, those are our wide receivers.
yep.
But Olave and Smith were both questionable. So the question was, who do we bring off the starting lineup? We had Diggs, we had Dobbs
Hmm.
available as wide receivers. We had been playing Dobbs
Yes, we have.
in a wide receiver spot or a flex spot, depending on the day of the week the games were. We also had Kamani Vidal that we wanted to work into the lineup,
Oh,
but we also
definitely.
had Menanje. And so I said to you, I proposed, okay, so we're starting Brown, we're starting Javante, no brainer.
Hmm.
We're starting Vidal, no
Oh,
brainer,
yeah,
because
yeah,
Hampton is now out by the time we had to make a decision on Thursday.
yeah,
And I said, what if we float? We don't play Dobbs, and we got Diggs as our floater,
yeah.
and we put Menanje in there. And you were
Yes,
like, yeah, that's the play.
yes,
And the ironic thing is the play would have been to play Dobbs and bench Lamar Jackson out of the super flex, but you'd never have the guts to do that.
yeah,
But we made every right decision last week
yeah.
with that team because we ended up benching Diggs, not because we thought low on Diggs, we thought high on Menanje.
Yes,
And we benched Dobbs again, not because we were feeling bad about Dobbs, but because we are higher on Olave, Devonta Smith, and Menanje. Well, Menanje in this scoring got 21 and a half points.
oh, damn.
Okay. Javonte Williams was 19 and a half.
Nice.
Chase Brown was 24.3.
Yeah, that's
All were
all gravy.
great starts. And Vidal
Oh,
was
yeah,
24.7.
yeah,
So we made all the right decisions. Well, Dobbs on Thursday scored 12 points.
yep,
And what did I say?
yep,
We still made the right decision
yeah,
because he only got 12 because he got in the end zone. Otherwise, he's at 7 or at 5 and 5.8 or whatever.
right.
So we made the right decision. Well, we ended up being the right decision even after the fact because Olave played, Devonta Smith played. We could
Yep.
fire them up. Devonta Smith had 12 points, just like Dobbs. Olave, 16.7. Every decision we made on that team
Mhm.
was perfect last week, except for the kicker. We even got 39 and a half points out of the Chargers defense. How about that for a deal?
That was a nice play.
So this week, I'm so worried that we'll have that winner's mentality. Oh, we can't miss.
Yeah.
And
What are we
all of a
gonna do
sudden
with
you
Lamar? That seems to be the big question. What's our choice, Lamar or Stafford?
no. We have Lamar or Lamar. We have two quarterbacks. So
Oh,
our decision with Diggs out is do you play Dobbs or Lockett in that super flex? And it's never a smart idea to bench a quarterback. Plus, Lamar's going up against Pittsburgh. They looked so disinterested last week against
boy,
Buffalo
they
on
did, didn't
defense.
they?
And they are the 26th worst team against quarterbacks right now.
See,
So they're
that's why I'm suspicious. You
so
know,
I
it
think I think
seems it
yeah,
seems too good to be true. Yeah.
everything's lined up for having a big week. So, and Lamar's never had more than 3 bad weeks in a row, even in his worst year.
Right
I
now,
I got to fire him up this week.
yeah, I don't have a choice because Dart is on bye.
Yeah. Yes, and that's the key is I'm sitting there in the other league. I got Stafford and I'm like
Yeah.
he's playing Arizona who's been
Mhm.
really solid defensively. They're not the top, but they're certainly not a
Yeah.
defense you want to be messing with. I'm probably pivoting to Lamar this week with that Pittsburgh defense.
Yeah.
Even as as he's been.
Yeah.
But the key is try as much as you can to just look at this week. In weather forecasting, if I blew a forecast really bad on Monday, Tuesday I didn't come in feeling, oh, I got to make up for Monday. I was just like, screw it. I was bad yesterday. I'll be back to being good today. You tried to leave it behind as much as you could, but it isn't always possible because you are a human being
Yeah.
with lots of emotions. Well, Professor,
I just
before
wanted to
we,
say we're jumping ahead, but I
yep,
guess it's time to talk about. But look, here's Baltimore's power rank,
ooh,
fifth.
I like it.
Look at Pittsburgh,
Oh, I love it.
the
I love
mirror
it.
image.
Yeah, love
So
that.
I'm hoping that helps us, Dennis, this week. Uh,
Oh, I'm leaning in. I got Derrick Henry fired up in a guillotine league. I'm
and look at
thrilled about that.
Dallas versus Detroit. That I was just looking at
Ooh,
that pick on Dennis.
yes.
I'm probably playing some Dak. I may be tricked. You know, he can get a little tricky, but boy, that power ranking sure says don't let Dallas trick you. Don't not start them. So I got to do some more pick 'em thinking because I gotta keep whipping everybody's butt, Dennis. I would be very upset if I went all the way through the season and didn't be the number one dog in our pick 'em for
Yeah.
TSA.
So so
I'm
what you're so what you
138. The next guy is 133. So I
oh
got
yeah.
5 games ahead uh, of
With
them.
five with 5 weeks to play.
Yeah, yeah. I got to knock his crap out.
You do. So what you're saying is your analysis of the data is telling you the Dallas is looking good
You're not
today.
gonna let me forget that. See, I know. Because Dennis, I'm still giddy from that superfecta win, Dennis. See, I'm not
I
thinking right.
I don't blame you, man. I don't
See,
blame
you
you.
know who Tampa Bay on a damn was it win today's win on a Wednesday, the last race of the day on turf. Come on, Dennis. Who the
Probably
hell's
an
gonna who the
probably
hell's
an
gonna play that?
probably an optional claimer for
Yeah,
non-winners of two races lifetime. Yeah.
how the option is how many hooves they got that still work.
But whereas
There's the option.
as my dad used to say, he says, this field looks so bad on paper. I expected some of the horses to come out for the post parade with only 3 legs.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Man,
all right,
you know, we need
Professor.
to get that time machine. I would love to have hung with your dad,
Oh, you would have
and
loved
you
him.
would have
Yeah.
loved my dad. He was, if you know, he was quite the character to track too, and that
Uh,
would have been neat to hang with these old dogs and
oh, yeah.
watch them perform there. Okay, I know we got business to take care of. Power rankings are done. I'm a little bit. I have not done the player rankings, and certainly I've got it. I just hadn't. I don't think we'll need it for our analysis, but I do have it. I just hadn't put it in figure form yet. I'll have to work on that tomorrow. I'm a little bit tired because I had to make that gumbo. My daughter was in
Oh,
there, she told me to get to work, chop, chop. My 26-year-old daughter beat my, beat the dad, in the nursing home. She's going to steal my pudding cups if I'm bad. I know she says, don't you tease that. They won't let me visit you in the nursing home. So she's already plotting here to take everything I own, but I don't care. She's an only child, a princess.
And she is a wonderful
That's
young
right. You
lady.
met her, so I can't say I
Wonderful.
can't exaggerate. That's right. You have
No,
met her.
she's a wonderful, wonderful young lady. But
She
boy,
is,
I
but
could see her trying to
she's
put one
chop
over on
chop.
the old man, man.
Hurry up,
That's
make that gumbo. Chop chop. I was about to say, I'll chop chop you. Sit there, but I did make a big pot of the gumbo today. So Becky was down there, my wife, testing it.
oh,
And
and
like I
that
said, the
just
dogs were
makes
probably whiffing the
yeah.
fumes and got them all stirred
Oh
up.
yeah.
So
That
anyway,
makes the whole house smell really, really
so
good.
this week, Dennis, it's here's Vegas. We got uh,
Oof.
Detroit and Dallas is the Huskiest of the Huskies this week. So
On Thursday night
for our
football.
TSC matchup, we'll definitely do Buffalo Cincy, folks. So y'all can
Yes.
check us on that later. We do the highs and the lows, and certainly Cleveland, Tennessee. There is some, streaming goodness for defenses on both sides there, Dennis.
Yes.
Tennessee is in
Yes.
play as well this week.
Yes. Yeah.
So, in fact, it's one of those games where both of them could be streamed. Uh, so we're doing the 54 over under, and Detroit is
Woo.
favored over Dallas, you see, but the power rankings. And so, Dennis, I haven't done the studies over the last few years, and I'm sure there's an equation somewhere to where we could meld all this together, the rankings, the MVPs, the spikes, the consist. We want to make our own gumbo, our secret gumbo, because we can't tell
Ooh, yeah.
anybody, and see if
Ooh.
we can, get a little bit advantage over Vegas there. I mean, that's, we got to pay ourselves in this fantasy football stuff because there's no money elsewhere because ESPN's not paying attention to us. So we got to earn it the old-fashioned way. But anyway, that's an interesting game. But I'm just telling you, I saw this, and so I'm intrigued on some of my stuff. And again, I am still charting the pass rush ratios for the week. And I was just trying to see. Here's Detroit. They're a little bit more kind of average. They're more balanced this week, passing and rushing. And Dallas, where's Dallas at? Dallas is a little more rushing than passing, but not great. They're pretty close, Dennis.
Yeah.
So it looks like I'm going to call it two balanced teams here because they're not like Washington. It's all about the pass this week. I think Scary
Oof.
Terry may be something of interest. Look at KC. Remember last week they were all about the pass?
Oh,
This
yeah.
week there's all about the rush.
That's interesting.
Isn't that interesting?
That is interesting.
So, I'm looking forward and I'm going to go back and I'm going to have this predictions for all the weeks and we'll have secret data you and I to think about for next year. But I'm just tracking this now, folks. So don't jump in. But anyway, there's that. So Dallas and Detroit, I'm saying balanced. 30 to 24, 3 point spread. Dallas is away. I think that's some of that. See, folks, Detroit's at home. Detroit, 18% more efficient at home, Dennis, if you look way down there on the
Wow.
H/A there. So 18 points, 18 percentage better. Dallas, 9% less efficient away. So the player rankings are saying that, maybe there's a different story, but the way the tendency is Detroit should handle Dallas, at least that. Uh, Detroit, though, is declining the last 3 weeks versus the season because they've been doing so good earlier in the season, and Sun God was out last week. We lost him, and so I think you could see that. And I think injuries, I'm just curious about my declining and improving. Does that really tell us something for our playoffs?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, everybody's
Yep.
talking about Kennedy and Tesla. We should go get them, etc.
Yeah.
I'm curious to see in a declining team, is that for the going into the playoffs? What does that do? Is that telling us some little tidbit for tie breaking that we need to have for flexing? Dallas, like I said, is rushing and passing is below average, Dennis. It looks like they're balanced, but they're below average. They're usually above
Hmm.
average in both. And so that's kind of intriguing a little bit. Detroit has actually been below average or at average too. So not sure I'm getting a lot there, but they're both highly efficient teams, 81 and 86. So they're the same. They're in the top in the league. So we got two efficient teams, but Dallas doesn't like away, Dennis. So that may break the difference. And look at the daps that Detroit gets. It's the play everybody in Detroit. So for this week, maybe Tesla and Kennedy are the play here. Even the kicker, I just wouldn't play the defense. Dallas, on the other hand, it looks like they want to stay balanced with rushing. The Daps say no, and Ferguson's going to have to earn. It looks like a CD Lamb game and a Pickens. Looks like that's what, if Dallas wins, they're going to have great games, Dennis. That's how it looks to me, that if Dallas can get Lamb and Pickens their one or two touchdowns each, Detroit's going to be in a world of hurt trying to keep up with that.
Yeah, this is an interesting matchup because when I look at Dallas and we look at the efficiency, is that a case of playing indoors versus playing outdoors on the road? I would need to break down the stats for their
Their away
road
games, yeah.
their road games and see if there is a difference between indoor stadiums and outdoor stadiums, because maybe
Right.
that's the efficiency we're seeing here, the difference we're seeing here in their efficiency. And if so, maybe they'll only lose 1 or 2 points for the home crowd, being raucous, because boy, it's raucous in Detroit. But in this game, the way Dallas is surging, and I'm going to assume, and I know that's dangerous because we know what it does to you and me.
Yeah.
I don't think Sun God is playing in this one. I don't like the pivot to the game show host Tom Kennedy or the amazing inventor, Tesla. Tesla. But yeah, I don't like either of those guys. I think they sort of cancel each other out. I think I do love Jamison Williams this week because he is going to be the main focal point of that offense along with Gibbs. But I think the way the game plan for being without Sun God is to figure out how to run more. And Dallas's defense, the last few weeks, has been getting better. Doesn't mean they're great, but they've been improving. They added this Quinnen Williams guy up
Mhm.
front. He seems to be hurting the interior run game for the opposing teams. And they added 3 guys off of injury that weren't with them earlier in the year. And this Overshawn is really good. He is so good at pursuing, and his strength is shutting down that outside run. So you know, that makes it a little bit tough for Gibbs because they do like to get him out on the edge.
Right.
So I am going to reluctantly take Dallas to win this one. I do like the over. I think while both defenses are occasionally able to come up with a stop, they give up too many yards.
I think Vegas is saying that with a high over under.
Yeah, because Detroit, they're
So would you bet the over under?
54 is a big number. Like
Mhm.
that's a big number. The number of games that we go over 54 in today's
And it's a
NFL with
folks, it's a Thursday
and it's a
game.
Thursday game. So I do like the over, but I don't like the over enough
To bet
to
it.
bet it. I think when I say they're going to be over this, I'm talking 55, 56. That's not enough of a margin. I want a 5 or 6 point edge.
If I was betting parlays, I think a dollar play, a Gibbs, Lamb, maybe Pickens, Jamison Williams,
Yeah, I like that. I
four
like that.
touchdown play.
Yeah, you'll get good odds on it.
Yep.
So
Or a
I would,
dollar.
yeah, I would take a shot at that one because I do think there's going to be a lot of scoring unless Thursday night kicks in. We haven't seen a Thursday night be Thursday night for a while. And by that, I mean a game that is unusually lower scoring than expected. We haven't really seen that. We've seen some blowouts,
Yeah.
but we've seen some blowouts where, one team had a Thursday, but we haven't seen both teams have a typical Thursday where
Right.
we're 10 points under where we expect to be, which was par for the course in a lot of these Thursdays. I think guys are used to these quick turnarounds, and it's not even a quick turnaround for Detroit because they played last Thursday, and same with Dallas.
Yeah.
So in essence, this isn't a quick turnaround game for either team because they're
Which is
used to
different than the typical Thursday.
very different, which is why again I do think we'll see lots of scoring in this one. So head on over to the scienceoffantasyfootball.com. The professor will have lots of great data that we'll be posting as the week goes on. I'll have 2 articles over there for you to take a look
One
at.
of them is already up, all 32
One's
looking
all
back,
32's
thinking
up.
forward. It's up.
Leader of the pack will be done probably tomorrow morning. I'll get that over to the
And the
editor
editor
for
will
him to
get
take a
his
look.
ass to work if I have to kick it.
Head on over to the sports affiliation. You want to check out our sister show on Saturdays called the Matchup Lab. And while you're there, like and subscribe to their YouTube channel, folks, because every day of the week there is a great show coming
And that
up on the
snap,
sports
crackle,
affiliation.
pop, you couldn't make it. I jumped in for you.
I know, great pinch hitting role there,
Yeah,
Mr. Bush. Thank you
yeah.
very much for
You're
that.
welcome. You're welcome.
And of course, head on back here on Saturday for another edition of the Science of Fantasy Football.
Get to work, folks.
All right, Professor.
How about
That was
that?
good stuff, man. I, the comparison of fantasy football to horse racing, I think fits so well.
Yeah.
There are so many things that I have learned from horse race betting that has helped. And I don't necessarily say it helps me win in fantasy football. It helps me not lose. There's a
Yeah,
difference.
well, like I said, I'm not playing any superfectas. I played one today. I hit it, folks. I'm telling you, if you're Vegas betting of like Thursday, let's just say
Oh,
you did my parlay and say you did $20 and it paid you 200 or what, I don't know what the odds are. I would recommend you wait 2 or 3 days for you try to hit the basketball or the college. Let yourself cool down a little bit because the more you want something, your adrenaline's going to mess with you. I'm just telling
well,
you, at the racetrack, you get
oh,
excited and you're like, damn it, I'm not playing, this short maiden. Nobody's has any form. I'm just going to walk away, go get a hot dog. And about halfway there, man, but I just won the last two. I don't need a hot dog that bad. You walk by and you see people at the window and you just start, that palm itches and you start thinking about them Benjamins that are going, when you hit that exacta or something. All of a sudden you've got the dog in one hand and you're laying down some of these cheap maidens in the other. You're the
And,
one with mustard on your face after the race hits, and you're like, why did I? Then you get mad at yourself.
oh
Well, I
yeah.
guess I'm gonna have to double up to if I got to go home. I might as well double it up. And then, you're having to borrow from the hot dog guy, and he charges you an arm and a leg, and so it's just not good, Dennis. It spirals out of control, and you've
Well,
seen it. You've seen
I,
it.
I told you my dad was
I know.
so
Put it in
he
the other pocket.
put it in the other. He'd hand it to me and he'd
That is
say, "Just
such. Your
put
dad was so wise.
bank it. Do not give me my money back until
Yeah.
we're on the way home."
Because he
That was it.
knows his mind is not right.
That's exactly it. It's understanding in gambling. It's not the handicapping. This
We are not robots,
so
Dennis.
so back when my dad was in this syndicate that owned a harness horse. Okay, they all put up 2 grand and they bought a cheap $10,000 claimer.
Yeah.
Did well. My dad made money on the deal and then got out before it. Well, one of the guys that was in the group with him was this guy Hubie, who was uh, he was a pharmacist by trade, so he
Right.
made really good money. A smart man, really funny guy too. Hubie was a great handicapper.
Right.
He was the world's worst gambler.
Right.
Like and he let the psychological part of the game beat him every
Right.
time because he'd handicap and he. I just remember this one time where you know it was a Saturday night, Sportsman's Park, all the good races towards the end of the night, and it was a open handicap that everybody's looking forward to because it had fast ass horses in it. And he was, when we were comparing notes earlier in the day, earlier in the evening before the races started, he's like, man, I got this 4-1 shot. I think he's going to be about 4-1. He's 5-1 morning line. I think he's going to go off 4-1. He's in a good spot to get a good trip. I think he's going to beat the favorite. I think the favorite's going to be outside. And
Right.
he was very good at understanding the range of outcomes of what people were going to be betting as well. And we get to the race, and sure enough, this horse is 9-2, and the favorite is 3-5.
Right.
And I was like, I got him rated pretty good, with my system. I had him as one of the contenders, and I'm like, damn, Hubie knows his shit. I'm betting this guy, So I put money on the 9-2 shot, and after the race, I went down by the rail. Hubie's up in the stands, and I'm like, man, and the horse won like a champ. He got a perfect trip, coming on the outside with cover, tips in the lane, runs away with it. Nice, comfortable win. 9-2, which in harness racing is damn good price. I'll take 11 at the flats anytime, on a $2 wager. And so I'm all happy. I go to the window, cash my $5 bet because that's all I ever bet. And I'm having a good time, on up into the stands. I'm figuring Hubie put down at least 100 on it. That was his usual bet on the big races. And I look at him and his program is in shreds. He's taking his frustration out on the program. And I look at him, I said, what's going on? You nailed that one.
Yeah.
I doubled up on the favorite. I figured everybody else was right. I was down 150. I put 250 to win on the favorite to get even. I
Tough.
was like, Hubie, you're an idiot.
Yeah.
That's all I said when Ted cracked up because he had the race handicapped. He knew exactly what was going to happen by reading the form. That's how good of a handicapper he was. A great pace handicapper.
Yeah.
Pace handicapping was not my ultimate. I could get it right sometimes, but I just was good at getting the contenders back then. And if I could figure out to get lucky on the pace handicap, and then I'd have a winner. But I wasn't that great on pace handicapping. He was great pace handicapper, sucked as a better. But it's those kinds of illogical things. You see it in fantasy football all the time. You see guys, oh, I'm staying away from so and so in the draft. I like this guy better. I like the sun god better. And then all of a sudden you get to pick 10 and Justin Jefferson's still on the board. And you said, hey, if I had the sixth pick, I'm taking sun god. Well, he's there at 10 and you don't take him. And then you're cussing yourself out for passing on the guy. You took a logical pick, but you had it handicapped right. And then you let your emotion, you let what was happening get in the way of a smart decision. And that's the parallel between fantasy football and horse racing betting, because you can be your own worst enemy by listening to the noise and not sticking to what you knew was right.
Right. I
But
agree.
that's all emotions getting you.
Yeah, we need to do a little bit more horse racing coming over to fantasy. I think people could get some clues to help them as well. I still think a diary is good too, but
Yes.
it's nice to
Yes.
actually have trial by fire. And that's what horse racing is.
Oh,
And
yeah.
yeah, I mean, like I said,
Well,
you know,
imagine. Uh,
any flaw you have, Dennis, will be exposed at the racetrack. I don't. If you're too pessimistic, if you're too optimistic, if you're impatient, if you're
oh,
too
yeah.
it
Yeah.
it will all crumble. You think you're this way, and oh man, this is how I am. I'm spot on, and all of a sudden you're crawling out of there wearing a barrel, and there's nothing left. I mean, it can just crush you hard. It doesn't seem that way, but you ask everybody, how'd you do? Oh, I broke even. No, come on. Very few people broke even or made money on one day. It's most likely the rake and everything. You lost 5, 10%, and that's a good day.
Yeah. I always rationalized it. Um, I enjoyed the game. Okay. And we've talked about you're paying for your education
Oh, no,
in
definitely.
gambling.
Yeah.
Okay. So if I went out with $20 and I lost the $20, I could still have a good time at the track because that was my entertainment money. Obviously, I wanted to win money, but that was my entertainment. Instead of going to a bar and drinking $20 worth of bourbons and beers, I handicapped and bet on horses. Okay, so that's the way I rationalized. If I lost and I stayed within my limits, that's the other key. Emotionally, you sometimes can't. And it's worse now in horse racing. Could you imagine how much fantasy football players would go on tilt if there were 10 weeks in one single day? Because in horse racing, there's 10 races in a
Right.
day. You can make 10 different mistakes
Right.
during the day, where, in fantasy football, you got 1 week, you screw up, you got a week to lick your wounds, and another week, then you're ready to jump back into the setting lineups again. But in horse racing now, with intertrack betting, my God, you could go broke in a hurry. Like, there's a race every 3 minutes, not every 20 minutes, like
Yeah.
it was when there was only one track where you went to. in thoroughbreds on a Saturday at Arlington, it was 25 minutes between races. At Sportsman, there was usually 12 for harness. Now it's every 2 minutes. You can literally go from post to post to post to post to post. You can place 8 bets in a 15-minute period.
Yep.
And you can go on tilt a lot faster nowadays in horse racing with that. And it's usually a good idea to concentrate on like 2 or 3 tracks at the max. But boy, you got to have if horse racing taught me one thing, it was discipline when it came to wagering.
Yep.
Because you could lose a lot of money in a hurry.
Yep.
And the way I always did it, and this was, when I was an adult, it was ATM days, because they're glad to put ATMs all over the track for you back in those days, where you had to spend cash. Now with the app, you can lose money in a real good hurry. But even when I was like a responsible adult, I would take my credit card or my debit cards out of my wallet before I went to the racetrack. Never walked into a racetrack with a debit card because it was too much of a temptation. And I always kept the cash, and it was like, this is how much I'm wagering. And I'd have my money clip. The rest of my money was in my wallet, and that you didn't go into the wallet. You only went into the money clip money for wagering horses back in the day. And that was the way you learned discipline. That was my dad's version of handing the kid the money, But it takes discipline. But that same discipline, once you learn it, can really help you in fantasy football, because it keeps you from chasing what just happened. Because we know that, there can be a track bias some days, and front runners are winning at a higher rate, and we can figure that out. But the worst is, like, Arlington Park was not a front runner track back in the day, right? Long stretch.
Yep.
You wanted a horse just off the pace, or depending on the pace of the race, they could come from way out of it to win. You didn't always want that front runner on the dirt course. But all of a sudden, if 2 front runners in a row won, what happened with the wagering? Everybody started going to the speed.
Right.
They're thinking there's a speed bias, and they were wrong. It was just 2 really good speed horses.
Yep.
Or 2 speed horses that got a good pace. But fantasy football, how many people chase the points every week?
Every week, yeah. Well, in their waivers as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why Tom Kennedy is a big thing this week.
I understand the doubts. I
get it.
understand. But when Sun God's back and your playoffs, is Tom Kennedy going? Like I said, has he shown the ability to get you in your playoffs one game at 15 points or better?
No.
I don't think he has. There are others like Godwin has that back class that you might get one good game out of him the next 2, 3 weeks.
And
I would rather take a chance with him than Kennedy right now.
And here's it was the perfect storm with Kennedy last week.
Yeah.
Because he was the kick returner, so he's going to be on the active roster.
Yes.
He's a really good kick returner and punt returner. Okay, this isn't a ripping Tom Kennedy as a player, because anybody who makes the NFL is a damn good player.
Damn good.
But he had 4 targets in a perfect scenario. The perfect scenario being a starter goes down in the first series. Now, if Sun God is inactive this week on Thursday night,
Right.
they will have another wide receiver that will be active. So there's another option for catching passes. So Tisla has been a 2 to 3 target guy every single game. And when he gets in the end zone, then it pays off like it did last week. Tom Kennedy, perfect situation, only had 7 points, 7 PPR points, 7.6 to be exact. In a perfect scenario. That's what I mean. Don't chase the points, because look at that's a 40-1 shot getting the perfect trip up the rail, saving ground all the way and getting lucky. Yes. You know, Calvin Burrell coming in through the rail and winning because he got the perfect trip. Doesn't mean the next 40-1 shot that Calvin Burrell is on is going to get the rail to open and it's going to be in good enough form to take advantage. I don't see Tom Kennedy getting 4 targets this week. I could be wrong. I'll admit I could be wrong. But that was his best situation, and all he did was 7.6 points. I don't want that on my roster. And that's the difference of the horse racing mentality of seeing what happened and understanding the trip that guy got. He got the perfect trip, and he still only finished third. You know, he was a show horse. You know, that wasn't a winner for you. Now that's versus if Tom Kennedy would have had 8 targets. Then all of a sudden I'm looking, I'm going, ooh, now maybe they want to get him in as the third wide receiver instead of Tisla.
Right.
But only 4 targets in a perfect scenario. Not a situation I want to feed on.
Chase the volume, Dennis.
Yes.
Have we done it? Have we wore ourselves out?
I think we have done that.
Yeah, let me shut the recording.